Hey, uh, Adachi, is it? I would like to take my order to go. Oh, with extra napkins and chopsticks to the side. Maybe some pork buns and shumai as well? I wonder if she likes those.
You need extra utensil and napkins, right?
Yes, a friend and I are going to this week's DTRC show.
Doki Doki Reading Club? Oh, I forgot about that. So they are back, huh?
Want to join us? I know. I'm going to ask your manager if she can let you have early. Stay put!
What? What? No, 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 wait! What a troublesome girl. The best Adashima reading group is back.
Don't forget to invite your number one friend along the way. And to this journey to Adashima and chill. Today's Adachi. If Shimamura was a cat, she'd go.
Shima!
If I was a cat, I'd go.
Shima!
I wonder, why was it that our meows were the same? Chapter 5 Friend and Love. I was an extremely normal person. Sure, my personality was more than iffy. I'll give you that. As was the way I act. Still, if you focus not on those things but on the outline as a whole, I was just a regular person like anyone else. Nothing in particular stood out. I had no ability to touch the things that couldn't be seen. I wasn't able to involve myself in events that weren't happening directly before my eyes. Given all this, there was one thing that I feared more than anything else, that Shimamura would change into something that I didn't recognize while I wasn't there. I was scared of it. Scared. 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 It was for that reason why, going forward, I was never going to take my eyes off her, not even for a moment. So I had decided.
Um, Dachi?
With an awkward smile on her face, Shimamura addressed me. What? I asked with my eyes. As I did, my shoulder came into contact with hers. I was a bit too close, wasn't I? Shimamura's eyes moved from left to right, after which she exhaled softly.
Oh, whatever.
It was common for her to do that while we were talking, to simply let matters flow past her, to cut off the parts that she didn't want and only take in the rest. What made it different from when I hesitated to say something was the fineness of the cut. The first period that day had been sports, though it was a class I had usually skipped during my first year, as I found the act of having to change clothes to be way too bothersome. Not wanting to let Shimamura out of my sight, I decided to start attending going forward. The contents of today's class were fitness exams held outside. Joined by another class, we were split into multiple groups and made to run parallel along the track. The two of us had been sitting together, waiting for our turns to come up. Shimamura's eyes followed the group currently running, whereas I chose to focus mine on her. Never before had I seen her wearing a jersey. At the same time, it didn't really matter. The unique aura surrounding her would remain the same, regardless of what she wore. That I knew for sure, as I was busy trying to find a word to express that aura. The figures appeared before us.
Oh, it's Adachi.
Chichi!
They were Hino and Nagafuji, having run to where we were sitting. The hands of the former were placed on the shoulders of the latter, forming a train of stars.
Other way around today, huh?
I could hear Shimamura mumble to herself. What does she mean by that? Other way compared to what? Paying no mind to my confusion, she continued.
Look at you, Nagafuji. All listening.
With those words out of her mouth, Shimamura proceeded to point her fingers towards Nagafuji. I turned my head to her direction, and in an instant was able to understand what she meant. The hair of the tall girl was visibly wet. Looking really proud of herself, Nagafuji stroked her hair, which, to be completely honest, wasn't even all that long.
That will be because I took a bath this morning.
I'm telling you, you really got it close. Thanks to you, I didn't have enough time to fully dry my hair either.
He nodded, all the while smiling wryly. Taking a look, I could see that some of the water droplets dripping from Nagafuji's hair had landed on the other girl's forehead.
The bath your family has is just so large, you know?
There was something about her voice that almost made it sound like she was boasting. Wait, the bad Hino's family had?
Why would you go out of your way to have a bath at someone else's house?
It seemed that Shimamura had arrived at the same question I had.
I stayed over there last night, that's why.
Nagafuji stated in response. While the way she said it might have made you think there was nothing strange about it, personally, I found myself completely flabbergasted. She just stayed over at her house, taking a bath, and then come straight to school? Not just that. Based on Hina's earlier comment, it almost sounded like they'd taken a bath together. Again, completely flabbergasted. Shimamura's reaction was much more reserved than mine, culminating in a simple,
I see.
regardless, it didn't stop Hina from hurriedly placing her hand against Nagafuji's back and shoving her.
We can talk about that another time. Now, let's go.
And with that, the two ran off, returning to their own class. Shimamura,
They sure are busy, those two.
Shimamura stated, having watched them leave, before turning her gaze back towards the sports grounds before us. Myself, I temporarily stopped staring at her in favor of focusing on my thoughts. The gears in my head had continued turning furiously, trying their hardest to process the salt the two had let up on me in the form of their statements. Staying over at the other person's house, there was a part of me that saw that as outrageous, but also one that felt it to be the answer I class. That Shimamura's face, still staring illy at the field, and as I did, her eyes turned my way.
Could could I do, do that too?
Huh?
There was a look of confusion on her face. Paying no attention to it, I continued.
Stay over?
At Hino's place.
No, no. I shook my head multiple times from side to side.
At your place, Shimamura.
Her face immediately grew stiff. Was it really such an odd thing to say? I felt like my eyes might start spinning any second now. Yet, I simply chose to wait for a reply. Soon enough, Shimamura tilted her head and spoke.
Why?
Why? She asked.
Bath rehab is really small.
I don't mind. That's fine.
Fine? No, I felt the opposite. Not fine. The bad. Not fine. Of course, it wasn't the time to be fussing over such things. No, it was still far too early for that.
It doesn't matter, but I do want to stay over.
Hmm.
She closed her eyes before pressing her finger against her forehead.
For what reason?
Though softer in the way she said it, the contents of her questions were identical to the one that had come before. I knew how confusing it must be for her to have me proclaim out of nowhere that I wanted to stay over at her house. I could also tell that the tone of her reply wasn't exactly favorable. Still, were I to pull back here after only proposing it once, I'd be left to simply sit back and wait for the next chance to come by, which, in turn, will be far too difficult. Opportunities were like things that floated on the surface of water. Trying to add more will only increase the amount of liquid, in turn, diluting them. The more times you repeated that process, the more diffused the likelihood of getting what you wanted grew.
I I want to become closer to you, Shimamura.
I muttered, exposing my true intention. To be perfectly honest with you, this whole proposal was something that had just sprung to my mind. I didn't have a reason for it beyond what I'd say, which was why doing so left me completely hollow inside. The discomfort of what I'd felt before. Take away all my expectations and wishes towards Shimamura, and only an empty husk will remain.
Are we on bad terms right now?
Confused, Shimamura stared at me, her eyes wide open.
No, we aren't, I think. But I want to get closer.
Unable to say this to her face, I cast my eyes downwards. As I did, my field of vision grew narrow, almost like someone had placed a hood, a cover over the top half of my head. That was all to say. These days, I found it impossible to act calm in front of her. You might say that I'd been like that for a while now, and though that was true, I felt like it'd been getting especially bad lately. In general, what did it mean for us to get closer? Despite being the one to choose those words, even I couldn't give you a concrete definition.
If I stayed over, that might help us get closer to each other.
My attempts at clarification only prompted Shimamura to tilt her head in a skeptical manner. The way I spoke, my words, they were simply too heavy and awkward to dispel her depth. To be perfectly honest with you, I didn't believe in the existence of such a strict step-based system.
Hmm.
Deep in thought, Shimamura turned to face forward. Hino Nagafuji said, "Perhaps it was simply too early for us." On the other hand, I always imagined us doing things once we got closer, once the bond between us grew stronger. But maybe friendships weren't something that you were supposed to treat like experience points in a game or something. That was how the world worked. There was a definite, right answer that will tell you what to do to strengthen your relation with someone. Then no one out there will ever struggle with dealing with others. It couldn't be the truth. Then again, it wasn't like a system where you could simply ignore someone for a long time before one day finding out that, oh, you were best friends. Sounded all that believable either. In the end, I was left with the same question as always. What should I do? How I wish the world was such that you could embrace someone, and in that instant, love will be born.
They had quite the effect on you, huh? Those two?
Shimamura suddenly stated, having not turned back towards me. It was exactly like she said, which was why I found it so embarrassing, burying my head against my raised knees. I picked her from behind them.
Is that bad?
No, it was just easy to tell.
She just didn't give me a definite answer, pulling on my shoulders. I grew anxious, anxious that I wasn't ever going to get one. Will it come soon? Or will it not? How long will it take? I waited breathlessly for that moment. Then, at last,
Well, whatever, sure.
those magical words took away all of my worries, feeling as relieved as one could feel. I rest my face against my kneecaps. A few hours then flew by, and soon the school day came to an end.
Alright then. Next, Saturday or Sunday. Either one of those sound good?
Shimamura suggests while checking the calendar on her phone. No sooner were those words out of her mouth than I responded with a series of nods. We were currently having some tea in the donut shop at the mall while discussing the practicalities of me staying over at her place. That's right, not only was the sleepover good in its own right, it also came with the side benefit of getting to spend time with her after school. What an incredible thing, truly.
What about 2 nights in a row?
You really want to stay for that long? I'm sure you know it, but our house isn't a hotel.
Shimamura laughed. After a short pause, she added,
I'm not Hino after all.
Is Neo's house really that big?
could it be? She had stayed there as well?
Based on what Nagafuji says, a real mansion. Not that I've ever seen it for myself.
I sighed in relief. It seemed that my worries had been unfounded. In that case, whatever. I wasn't actually interested in Hino's house. Regardless of how large it might be, that didn't matter. The only thing that did was that Shimamura hadn't been there.
Anyway, look, it's not like I have anything to do at home. I'm sure it'll be okay if I stay over.
What about what about your part-time job?
I'll go there from your house.
Shimamura's shoulders shook as if there had been something weird about what I just said. I wish she would have told me which part that was. The uncertainty was making me really anxious.
Nom, nom.
Having put down her phone, Shimamura took a bite out of her donut. Imitating her, I bit into mine as well. She bought 3 additional donuts to take back home with her. Apparently, for her little sister. I could assume she'd eat the second one herself, but that still left one extra. Mysterious. However, just as I was wondering about that,
Somehow, I have a feeling there will be an additional person there once I get back home. Huh.
she scoffed. An additional person? Shimura quickly continued.
Lately, I've started to feel like I have two or three little sisters, not just one. I wonder, why is that?
Wiping sugar off her finger, she raised her head as if staring off into the distance. However, as I quickly realized, she was also staring at me. I blinked instinctively. Could it really be? Slowly, my finger turned to point at my own face.
I'm one of them.
She laughed at me. The smile on her face was the good type, the joyful type, the kind delighted that I've gotten what she was talking about. Usually, when Shimamura smiled, I got the impression that she was doing so merely to smooth over things, because it fit the situation. But in this instance, that wasn't the case. Her entire face played a role here, even her eyes. That was very wonderful thing indeed. And yet, the fact remained that she'd laughed at me. Hanging my head and staring at the table, I found myself wondering, a little sister, huh? A little sister. Sakura, Shimamura. It even rhymed. Sisters were closer than friends, so that was good. At the same time, I felt that there was a problem. Each step I took towards becoming close to her made it harder and harder for me to get her to look my way. First things first, what should I prepare? Sitting in the very center of my room, I took a look around. There was no such thing as getting ready too early. Why would I subject myself to the panic of realizing last minute that I was missing something when I could just as well avoid it? It was simply natural. Yes, extremely so. As if, obviously, I was only doing this to hide how I was nervous. Let's start from the top. Changes of clothes, that was essential. Using my fingers, I counted how many I would need. I then proceeded to stare at said fingers with a pained look on my face. I only own around 3 pairs that I wore around the house during the weekend. To make it matters worse, they were all pretty much the same clothes, just in different color. Oh, but don't get me wrong, I did own other clothes as well. For example, there were the ones I bought for my Christmas meeting with Shimamura, which now lay practically unused in my closet. There was just the slight problem that those were all winter clothes, and since it was spring right now, I couldn't exactly wear them. It seemed that I would have to do some shopping again. Buy clothes. I wrote on a piece of paper as I was using as a memo. Next on the list were washing utensils, change of underwear, socks, and my wallet. Oh, and my phone too, just in case. Should I bring my own futon? Maybe. I didn't know if they had a spare ones. Although then again, it being such a warm season meant that I could likely sleep just fine even without one. Yeah, let's leave it out. It would have been too big and bulky to carry around anyway. So then, was that all I needed? Reading out what I've written on the memo, I couldn't help but see the similarities between it and a handbook you'd give to a student about to go on a school trip. Yeah, this should be good. Not that there was a room for much else anyway. You could likely enter a hospital with this list of items and do just fine. Crossing my arms, I began to ponder. Merely staying at Shimamura's house wasn't really meaningful in itself. Sure, I get to see her in her normal state, and while that bring me great joy, what didn't was making her feel bored. Unless I went out of my way to find something for us to do, it wasn't hard to imagine that we'd end up simply sitting there in silence, like what tended to happen on the phone. Shimamura and I having fun together. What could I prepare to make that happen? A set of playing cards? Somehow, that felt even more like we were going on a school trip. Plus, playing with cards wasn't exactly interesting when there were only two of you. In that case, what about a game meant for two people? Like shogi or Othello? Shogi was off the table since I didn't actually know how to play it. But Othello, Othello might work. I went ahead and wrote it down in the corner of the memo under the maybe category. I then lifted my head and gave the boomerang sitting on the shelf a glance. I wasn't considering that as an option, but still, it was true that Shimamura liked table tennis. Going by that logic, perhaps she would prefer outdoor activities over doing something inside? Speaking of, we had gone bowling that one time. I'd definitely like to try that out again without that weird girl around. Then again, that made me think, what was the point in staying over at her place if we were just going to go outside anyway?
No, that's not it.
We'd leave together, we'd come back together. Just imagine that, sharing the way back with her. What a lovely thought. I added bowling to the memo. And yet, despite that, I was left with exact same question as before. What's next? Slouching forward, I stopped to think, what exactly did friends around the world do for fun? For a moment, I considered asking Hino Nagafuji. However, on a second thought, I decided against it. Those two were hardly what I'd call normal, and I didn't get the feeling they would make for a very good reference material. Moreover, Nagafuji's answer would certainly consist of some nonsense I couldn't even understand. This, this sure was difficult. Thinking that to myself, I put the pen down. I then crossed my arms. In a lot of ways, I resembled a person confronting a Zen question. Shimamura likely wasn't having any of these thoughts. Was she? Just imagining the vast difference in enthusiasm between us caused my body to shiver. Shimamura. Shimamura's house. Shimamura and I.
Hmm.
If truly was nothing for us to do, then I suppose we could always just watch TV or something. She would let me sit between her legs like the last time. There, I'd turn my head, face her, and uh, before I knew it, I'd uncross my arms and place my hands against the floor. With my head hung, I waited for the warmth running through me to cool down. Then, once calm, I crossed my arms for a second time, closed my eyes, and asked myself the following: if it were to happen again, would I be able to stay there without running away this time? Would I be able to face her? Most likely. Right. That was the answer. Don't Run. Of course, saying it like that, like I was talking about someone else, was easy. And the moment I actually considered what the possible outcomes of going through with it might be, the insides of my head once again began growing hot. Somewhere deep, I could feel a throb.
I won't run away.
I found it a little surprising how unreservedly I was able to bring myself to shout those words out when no one else was at home. Perhaps something had snapped inside my head during that time when I'd keep shouting and shouting. My jaw certainly felt lighter to move. I couldn't remain the way I was forever. Why? Because I was making an effort to act more assertive towards Shimamura. I went through my list of items, decided there were enough, and then glanced up at the clock. The day appeared to be far from over. Yeah, it might have been a bit premature to be focusing so much on the weekend. Time flowed slowly, just like back in those days when I had spent it all of it by myself. Of course, the difference was that I could now see hope at the end of it. Not yet. Restlessly, I moved my right foot up and down. All I wanted was for the hands of clock to rotate faster.
Hmm.
I got up and went to buy clothes.
Oh, don't you have a bit too much stuff?
That was the very first thing Shimamura said to me as she welcomed me in. I was carrying a bag on my right shoulder, same for my left shoulder. In addition, I also had one on my back. That made 3 bags in total. Not really all that much. Was it?
Mm. It's almost like mm, you were moving in.
She laughed. Based on her reaction, it seemed impossible for her to imagine what I could have brought that took this much space. During my earlier shopping trip, I began thinking about this and that and had ultimately concluded that it wouldn't be good for me to simply ask her for things. With that in mind, I'd ended up grabbing a bottle of shampoo. Similarly, making my own food felt like it would waste less of her time, which was why I had bought 4 days worth of it. I even briefly reconsidered my stance on bringing my own futon. Although, as you could see, that was the one thing I didn't have with me. Regardless, that was all to say that I've fallen into the rabbit hole of anxiety and climbed out of carrying 2 extra bags. It was my goal to stay over both Saturday and Sunday night and then head to school with her on Monday, which was why I also loaded up my uniform and textbooks. Those took the majority of bag number 3.
Also, aren't you a little early?
Shimamura proceeded to rub her eyes as she stated this. I could see a lone tear roll down her face, illuminated by the morning sun, left there by a yawn. I didn't blame her. It was currently 8 in the morning.
Sorry, were you sleeping?
One moment, I'd lay in my bed with my eyes wide open, unable to get sleep, and the next, I was here, standing before Shimamura's house.
Yeah, you did wake me up. Not that it matters. Now you can be pretty strict with time when you want to, huh, Adachi? Well done, well done.
Huh? Y-
To tell you the truth, I'd actually gotten here before 7. However, that was definitely way too early in my opinion. which was why I had spent the last hour or so riding around on my bike. I could only thank the warm season that I wasn't shivering to the bone right now. Oh, and also the fact that it was the weekend. Who knew what all kinds of kids heading to grade school would have thought of me? Shimamura brushed her ruffled hair to the side before opening her eyes wide open.
Are you hiding more surprises, I wonder? Mm. Anyway, let me start over. Properly this time. Welcome, Adachi.
With a smile on her face, she greeted me. Thus, I was invited to her house, like a pet beckoned in by its master. I took my shoes off and stepped into the hallway, and then immediately my eyes met with her little sister, having just come out of from deeper in. I twitched. She did as well.
This is a friend of mine. You remember her, right?
Shimamura introduced me.
Sorry to bother.
I mumbled while bowing, earning myself a quiet welcome in response. I think she might have mentioned it earlier, but regardless, it seemed that Shimamura's sister was shy around new people. That made two of us. Honestly, I felt a slight affinity towards her. I also felt relieved. It was likely this point we had in common that led Shimamura to treat me like a little sister. Wasting no time, the girl disappeared into one of the rooms. The kitchen? Perhaps?
Stop pretending like you're a good girl.
Shimamura chuckled after her sister. Then she turned around towards me.
Are you fine with the room upstairs? And again, it's the only free one, so I don't really know why I'm asking.
She was pointing at the set of stairs next to the hallway. Instinctively, I nodded. It was only a second later that I realized something. Wasn't her room supposed to be downstairs? My confusion likely ended up showing on my face. As mere months, well, as mere moments later, Shimamura opened her mouth.
Oh, upstairs won't do?
No, that's not what I.
How was I meant to say this? My eyes bounced all around, and so did my heart. Ultimately, these were the words I chose to go with.
I was just wondering. We're not gonna stay in the same room? Oh no, don't get me wrong. I just wasn't good at spending the nights by myself. That's all.
One look at my family background made it clear what a baseless lie that was. Shimamura likely saw right through it as well, didn't she?
You prefer that?
She asked me straight, going about it the least roundabout way possible. If I were to answer honestly, then yes, I would prefer that. Extremely so. You could even say that I wanted it. Using my eyes, I did my best to appeal to her, and yet Shimamura would only smile at me awkwardly. It wasn't entirely clear what she was trying to imply with the expression on her face.
Personally, I don't mind. I just think my sister will most likely be against it. So, sorry.
Rejected.
I see.
I took the grandiose expectations I've had and hid them behind a fake smile.
This wasn't the first time I'd been slapped by reality across my face. Things never went my way. I really should know better than to get my hopes up. And yet, despite all that, I still couldn't help but feel disappointed.
Oh, yeah, fine. Not a big deal.
I rushed to state, not because I wanted to, but because I felt like I had to. We then climbed upstairs for me to drop off my stuff. I was guided to a room, the same one Shimamura had in the past used for studying. It was no longer winter. The kotatsu had been cleared away, and in its place, a single futon had been rolled out. I placed my bags in the center of the room and sat down next to them. There, I found myself thinking back to Shimamura's earlier words. Personally, I don't mind.
She doesn't mind?
The darkness before me brightened up ever so slightly. Deep down, I might have been more of an optimistic person than how I first appeared. My nose and mouth pointed upward, I proceeded to breathe in the atmosphere of the room, heavy, with dust, just like the last time. I could feel my skin growing dry as it came into contact with my face. I remained there on the floor, half sitting, half standing. Perhaps I should go open the curtains? I considered doing that, but before I could, the door creaked. A head then poked through the slight gap. It was Shimamura's.
How about breakfast? Did you eat before you came?
Oh, it's fine. I brought my own.
I replied, before sticking my hand into my bag. What I pulled out was a sack of stick breads. No, not all that badly crushed, due to having been placed on the top. Then, as if to emphasize how me staying over wasn't going to cause her any bother, I added,
Uh, uh, I have these.
Humph.
Yeah.
what was going on here? I wasn't really sure. Staring at her, I began to open the bag. This, however, prompted Shimamura to open her eyes wide.
You're going to eat here.
Huh?
I was just thinking, why don't we eat together? In the kitchen. I'm just about to have breakfast.
So, this was what it had all been about. Not all that confusing, now that I thought about it.
No, no. I will. I'll come.
With the bag still in hand, I rushed to get up. My clumsy behavior earned yet another giggle from Shimamura. Following her, the two of us made our way to the kitchen downstairs. Shimamura's little sister was sitting there. And not just her, but her mother as well.
Ooh, welcome.
The woman used the exact same words her daughter had when greeted me. Even their voices sounded similar.
Sit over there.
I moved to the seat appointed to me. Shimamura sat next to her sister, whereas I was left by myself on the other side of the table. Based on the chair's location relative to the rest of the family, I could only assume that this was where her father normally sat.
We've never had a friend stay over before.
Shimamura's mom stated. all the while looking at me with so much interest. I found myself shrinking for her intense gaze. At the same time, there was something about those words, never before, that caused my heart to throb. I was the first. First. A wave of joy gushed out from deep within me.
Still, I was a bit disappointed when I learned that you hadn't come to study with her.
Although she said she was disappointed, based on the smile on her face, it didn't seem like she'd really been expecting all that much. Right. We were connected by being in the same class, and as such, it made sense to assume that the reason why I had come to stay over would have something to do with school. Well, then, what did I come here for? I would have been at a complete loss had she asked me that. Thankfully, though, she didn't. She didn't say anything afterwards. Looking to my side, I saw Shimamura's little sister repeatedly poking her omelette. I got the impression that she didn't really want to be here. Naturally, that was because of me. I was the reason why her shoulders appeared drawn in. Hanging my head just like her, I opened my bag of bread.
Oh, I did prepare breakfast for you too, Adachi.
Shimura's mom stated, in a cheerful manner before handing me a plate. On it was a slice of bread, next to a serving of scrambled eggs.
Ara, would you like some?
Oh, um, yeah, thank you very much.
I set the bag aside and accepted the plate. It felt kind of fresh to be treated with such kindness. I took small bites out of the bread. Glancing at her, Shimamura's little sister appeared to be eating in a similar way. Our eyes happened to meet, which made me feel quite awkward. And so, I once again ended up hanging my head. Unlike her mother, it seemed that the youngest of the family wasn't particularly welcoming of me. It wasn't hard for me to sympathize with her. After all, we were similar, she and I. Both of us were the kind of people who wanted to hug our big sister all to ourselves.
Say, Adachi, do you take school seriously? Oh, our girl doesn't. So I was just wondering.
It was her mother who spoke, changing the topic of conversation. How was I supposed to reply? I simply didn't know. I glanced at Shimura's face, but there were no answers there either.
Well, um,
She's like me.
Shimura stepped in. Right, I was like her. We were the same. Wait, no, I was definitely worse.
Ara? Really? I'm surprised. You look like such a good girl. Much more so than our little delinquent.
Shut up.
Shimura snarled, with an awkward look on her face. It was clear at glance that she wanted to finish eating as soon as possible and get away from here. Her mother appeared to see through this, but just didn't care. This was something I noted. The woman underestimated her daughter.
Shimamura is a very good girl. Way more than me.
Saying that she was a good guy would have been weird. Saying that she was a good person would have been even weirder. Of course, the alternatives being bad didn't mean the word girl was any less questionable in its own right.
A good girl? I see. So you're like her big sister then, huh, Adachi?
Her mother stated, while putting her hands together, almost like applauding. Her underestimating of the situation couldn't have been further from the truth.
She's not.
Shimamura stated sharply. Not that the woman heard. She was far too busy laughing. My goal had been to simply back her up, but instead, I ended up putting more oil into the fire. In one go, Shimamura tossed what remained of her bread slice into her mouth.
Thanks.
She stated, her cheeks stuffed, before getting up and leaving. Was she angry? Feeling slightly responsible, I also filled my mouth with bread, chewed throatly, and then more or less forced the chunk down my throat.
Thank you for the food.
I said. It wasn't a phrase I used commonly, and saying it out loud like this felt kinda awkward. Regardless, Shimura's mom responded by once again pressing her hands together and stating,
Ara. You two sure do get along.
next, I carried the plate I'd used to get to the sink to wash it. This prompted the woman to move next to me.
Oh my! How polite! My stupid daughter could learn a thing or two from you.
She followed her comment with a sigh, leaving me unable to do anything but nod my head vaguely. My head hung. I left the kitchen and followed Shimamura.
Are you angry?
About what?
She asked, having turned around to look at me. Her cheeks were no longer stuffed, and similarly, the tone of her voice sounded the same as it always did.
Oh, earlier? That's just how Mom always is. No point getting angry.
Laughing, she waved her hand in the air. Not the slightest bit of resentment could be heard in her words. So, was this the relationship between them? I couldn't help but feel a little impressed. Then again, how it actually felt, I didn't have a clue. I'd never experienced anything of the sort myself.
More importantly, Dachi,
Shimura turned to face me again, this time entirely. Holding her right arm close to her body, a faint smile appeared on her face.
what shall we do now?
Her voice tickled my ears. It sounded like she was asking a question, but at the same time, like she was proclaiming the beginning of something. I could feel a mixture of hope and impatience shoving me forward. How long ago was it that I'd started to think about weekends as being special?
Hmm.
As I laid there, staring at the ceiling with my eyes wide open, a question appeared in my head. What was it that we'd spent the day doing? There wasn't really anything worth reciting. Basically, I clung to Shimura like I always did, and it was that but just spread across the entire day. We'd played Othello on the board I brought with me, we'd sat side by side, in a really formal way for some reason, and watching TV. Shimura had taken a look inside my bags and laughed, while also astonished. I was the only one of us, both excited and eager. As for Shimamura, she acted like usual, choosing simply to cast herself into the flow of time and let it carry her. Occasionally, I would glance at her face, and each time she'd be staring into the distance with a tired look on her eyes. Our eyes would then meet, prompting her to let out a small giggle. There was something deep inside me that always creased up whenever I witnessed one of these delayed reactions. I couldn't say for sure what that something was, just that it was messing with my emotions. Regardless, that was the entire day. Completely mundane. Nothing special had happened. We'd simply spent time together in a way that was exactly what I'd wanted. And yet, there was also another side to me, one that had been hoping for something more drastic. I'd need a bit more time to bridge these two sides.
So that was it then. I'd come here and the next moment lay down by myself and welcome the night, without anything meaningful in between. Not exactly. Something had happened, something I could talk about if I really wanted to.
Oh, Shimamura, Hougetsu, go take a bath right away when you're done eating. I know you and how quickly you can fall asleep once you have your stomach full.
Yes, yes.
Shimamura replied to her mother, scolding her from across the dinner table, giving the impression she was barely even listening. She then glanced in my direction, as if embarrassed to have someone from outside her family be present for this exchange. It was almost like our positions had been reversed, which, if I'm being honest, kinda made me happy. I found it quite shocking that not only did they have enough food for me, her mother served me without any hesitation, like it was a completely normal thing to do. Also, worth mentioning, this was where I first met her father.
It's great having a young girl at the dinner table.
The man laughed briskly, earning a stern look from her daughter, obviously the same age as me. This was likely the kind of joke typical for him. There was a certain airheadedness Shimamura displayed at times, and based on what I saw, I couldn't help but wonder if she had perhaps inherited from her father. After dinner was done, the two of us went into the room upstairs. It was hard to describe just how happy it made me that she'd naturally chosen to come there with me instead of her own room down on the first floor. I was filled by a strange sense of superiority, almost like I could do anything, although whom those feelings were aimed towards, I wasn't exactly sure. Regardless, that was the reason why I was feeling so bold at that moment, and why I decided to go ahead and ask her the following.
Do you mind if I um sit between your legs?
I wondered, how had I sounded the previous time I asked her that? Slightly less brazen than I did now, I would assume. Those events had been erased from my mind, and though that meant I couldn't draw any other comparison between that past and the present, I still got the impression that I hadn't made much progress. In ever so slightly mean fashion, Shimamura curled the corners of her mouth.
If you promise you won't run away.
And so it happened. With my neck drowning, I nervously sat down between her spread legs. There, I found myself staring at her tights, as if allured by them. Shimamura's legs really were pretty. No doubt that China dress looked better on her than it did on me. I would love to see her wear it sometime.
You're not going to lean in?
She asked, all the while touching my shoulders. This was exactly how it had happened the last time.
Well, then Excuse me.
Acting slightly reserved, I went ahead and leaned towards her. Oh, whoa! My eyes then sprang open, completely unprompted. All thoughts lay my head. What was I doing here? I was so stupid, so weird, so like that. The sensation of something touching me caused me to blush, once again all on my own. That something was Shimamura's chest. Unlike before, when she'd been wearing her school uniform, all that stood between us was now a thin shirt, allowing me to clearly feel the set of bumps against my back. I curled up my body slightly, bringing me even closer to her. I was feeling dizzy, so much so that I genuinely worried the trembling inside me might end up escaping through my mouth, and in a similar fashion, my heart continued beating increasingly fast. Why? For what reason? I couldn't tell. Things were simply happening too quickly for my mind to keep up. Shimamura is a girl. So was I. Her chest was touching my back. What reason was there for me to ask this hastily? I sat there with my knees held up, my hands moving nervously above them. A few moments passed. I remained silent, instead focusing all of my attention on keeping myself together. That continued for a while, until at some point I noticed that Shimamura's breath had grown faint and stable. Was she asleep, perhaps? I thought about turning around to check, although seeing how that might cause her to wake up, I ultimately chose not to. My body growing even stiffer, I held my breath. It seemed that Shimamura hadn't been kidding when she said that her weekends consisted purely on resting. The motionless state we were in eventually came to an end as out of nowhere. I felt her lean backwards. This, of course, meant the two of us becoming separated. A strange sensation passed through my mind as she pulled herself away from me, almost like I was deflating. Yeah, there was definitely something weird about me. This was good. I chose to accept the situation I found myself in. Well, not that there was anything I could have done about it. Shimamura, lying on the floor with her legs spread, and me sitting between them. The whole thing was quite surreal. A slight smile formed on my face as I found myself thinking back to what her mother had said in the kitchen. Mothers knew well. It seemed likely that mine wasn't an exception to that rule, although for her, what she knew was probably how little she understood me. I sat there for a moment, thinking about all the stuff while staring at Shimamura's legs. Then it happened. The door opened, and a tiny face poked through to take a look inside the room. Judging by how her legs jolted, Shimamura appeared to have somehow sensed this and woken up. The person now standing in the doorway was none other than Shimamura's little sister. Her eyes narrowed, she stared at us. I could see her holding what appeared to be a fresh pajama in her tiny hand. Shimamura, still lying on the floor, noticed this too, and it was apparently enough for her to conclude that the girl was on her way to take a bath.
You want to go in first? That's rare.
Her sister walked inside the room without answering the question. Then, looking off to the side, she stated the following.
Let's take a bath together, sis.
Huh?
This suggestion was enough to cause Shimamura to spring up. I too was left shocked. It really had come out of from nowhere.
What's that? I thought you didn't like it because you found it embarrassing.
Hmm, it's fine every once in a while. Come on, let's go.
Having said this, her sister grabbed her hand. Confused, Shimamura got on her feet, allowing herself to be dragged away. She then quickly glanced my way.
I'll, go for a bit?
With those words, she exited the room before I managed to say anything one way or another. No longer supported by anything, I was left to tumble over like a Daruma doll, still holding my knees. I glanced up and saw that Shimamura's little sister had stopped in the doorway to give me one last look. Her eyebrows were drawn together, and her mouth was twisted like an upside down letter U. It didn't take me any time to interpret her expression. I knew where it came from. I knew what it meant. It was for that reason I found it impossible to chase after the two and stop them. I couldn't do anything, really. Just sit there. It was like staring into a mirror. So yeah, that happened. When you assemble someone in great detail, the things that displease you obviously displease them as well. As such, it was only natural for your gears to fail to engage when mashing them together without any sort of adjustments. I did want to get along with her little sister. I really did. However, if doing so required me to give up on certain things related to Shimamura, then it simply couldn't be the right path for me to take. And if it wasn't the right path, then I wasn't going to walk down it. Of course, I was already filled with regret at the best of times despite my attempts to strive for the best possible outcome. But even so,
She takes baths with her. She sleeps in the same floor as her. I wonder, do they use different futons?
I found myself harboring something similar to adoration towards the girl. She required even more affection than I did, and yet Shimura gave it to her. I suppose it just went to show what a meaningful thing that was, being someone's actual little sister. The bond the two shared was simply unbreakable. As had become the norm, I couldn't feel the light feelings of sadness descending upon me. Nights like this were always long, so long. I knew it was far too late already, but as I lay there, unable to fall asleep, a certain thought came to my mind. Nighttime made up over half of any given day. It was strange spending such a large span of time all by yourself. Strange in the sense that I saw Shimamura. Japanese was weird too, of course, but I didn't especially care about that. What I wanted to say was, if my goal for staying over was to be with Shimamura, then didn't the fact that I spent roughly half of every day separated from her make me being here half as meaningful? There, in the final hours of the day, I finally realized it. You only know what you should have done when it's too late.
That line. I remembered hearing somewhere now resonated within my heart more strongly than ever before. It was exactly for that reason that I should act while I still had time. There were still tomorrows left for me. The place for me to improve things was right here. Here. Here, it would change.
Huh.
Filled with such determination, I felt like I was never going to be able to get to sleep. If only I'd had any of that determination left when I woke up the following morning. Noon of the next day eventually rolled around with it, so did the time for me to go to work. Being an employee, I wasn't exactly in a position to tell them I wouldn't be coming due to it being the weekend. But every second spent outside Shimamura's house directly took away time that I could be with her. And yet, despite that, it wasn't all downsides.
Mm, mm, bye.
Her hair a horrible mess, having just gotten out of bed, Shimamura stood there in the hallway, waving her hand as she saw me off. The encouragement I was given by her words to walk forward, as well as the reluctance I felt towards closing the door, normally a mere hunk of wood, but now something so much more, both occupied my mind at once. mixing together to form a strange sensation of a lukewarm liquid flowing deep inside the depths of my stomach.
I'll be going now.
Warm. It was like something warm had fallen on my back and was now spreading gently throughout my body.
I'll I'll do my best.
I decided to go ahead and pump my fist just for the heck of it. After a few moments spent staring at me surprised, Shimamura moved her hand in front of her mouth and responded with a giggle. It was quite rare for my jokes to land so well. Perhaps it was a sign that today would be a good day. Still in a great mood, I stepped outside, only to be greeted by a sky without a single cloud. Yes, this certainly was a good day. I continued walking forward briskly. As I did, I began to think about where the energy now filling me had come from. Why was it that I'd taken in this exchange like it was something I couldn't possibly have seen coming? Why was it that I now found myself overflowing with both astonishment and joy? I didn't even need to think about it to be able to tell you that. The answer clearly lay with how badly I got along with my family. I had to wonder, were I to take a step forward and be willing to meet them halfway, would that lead to things ever so slightly changing between us? But part of me felt like it was already too late. At the same time, I couldn't deny that seeing Shimamura's family act so friendly towards each other, it caused me to reconsider my stance. Wonder if that was perhaps something I could attain for myself. Thoughts like those running through my mind, I eventually arrived at work. Though it was spring already, the lineup of people working there had remained mostly the same. Likewise, I was still forced to wear the china dress. I didn't hate wearing it, nearly as much as I once had, though. Shimamura stating that it looked good on me had really changed my opinion. Pulling the hem tight, I stood there, waiting for customers to arrive. Not disliking the dress itself didn't mean that I was any less bothered by my legs being exposed. Only a tiny sliver of my skin was actually visible compared to when I wore a skirt, and yet it felt so much worse. I wonder, why was that? The first group of customers arrived around 15 minutes after the store opened. Following them, a few people came in by themselves. I served them as I would any other customer, the body effectively moving by itself. Preparing towels, pouring water, it was all the sort of work I was used to doing. I continued without a pause, not necessarily because I felt motivated, but rather because I had no reason to stop. Time passed, and I was now serving a girl sitting by herself.
Please call me when you're ready to order.
I stated, having placed a glass of water on her table. The words practically flowed out of my mouth, which made sense, I suppose, considering the sheer number of times I must have uttered that exact phrase by that point. In any case, I then began to walk away. But just as I did,
Huh?
the girl suddenly lifted her eyes from the menu she'd been reading and pointed them towards me. Although you might have expected her to do so because she was ready to order, there was something about the situation at hand that made it clear that wasn't the case.
I knew it.
She muttered, with a faint smile on her face, cutting the awkward silence short before it could really even begin.
You're that girl, right? The other day. You gave me this.
Having said that, the girl took her bag, turned it over, and held it up to me. I immediately recognized the bear dangling off it. It was identical to the one I'd picked up at the mall, to the one that hung from Shimamura's bag. The rest of it came to me as well, soon after. Yes, this was the high school girl I'd run into in front of the pet shop.
Thanks for that. I mean it.
Oh, uh,
Incidentally,
sure.
incidentally, I also remembered wanting to have something that matched with Shimamura. Perhaps we could go buy something together once I got back. Somehow, I was able to view today as being full of good things. Was it everything I'd received from Shimamura's family that made it so? Must have been. That is what I chose to believe.
Wow, what a face.
Huh?
The girl's statement brought me back to reality. She was staring at me with her mouth open, and had likely been doing so for a while now. Panicking, I began pulling my expression together with my hands. Just what sort of face had I been making? My ears continued to spin furiously.
I thought you were super unfriendly, but turns out you have a pretty soft face.
The comment was followed by a wide grin, seemingly meant to carry on the tone of whatever I'd been doing. I was scared to ask her, but at the same time, I knew that not knowing and having to stress about it would be far worse.
What sort of face was it?
Hmm, I think I might describe it as looking like one of your teeth had fallen out, maybe?
Huh?
Loose and like lax.
The girl stretched the underside of her own face.
Like this.
The area around her mouth certainly fit the description of loose, lax as well.
Oh, see.
Yep,
Please call me when you're ready to order.
I wrung out my work voice. It didn't come from my throat, but somewhere else. With those words, I promptly left the scene. My ears continued to ring as I grabbed the tray. What stared me back on its polished, mirror like surface was my own face, red from embarrassment. What was I supposed to say when I walked in? That was the question bothering me as I made my way back from work. Considering that this was Shimamura's house, not mine, it would have been a little strange to say something like,
I'm back.
I normally didn't say anything when I came home. Why? Because most of the time, there wasn't anyone there. Ultimately, I decided to go with the safe choice, even if it was a little strange to repeat it.
Sorry to intrude.
I started cautiously as I walked in through the door.
Ara, welcome back.
A voice replied, returning my greeting with no delay. I was completely taken aback. The speaker had been none other than Shimamura's mother, currently cleaning the floor in the entrance. There was something about the words she'd chosen, welcome back, that caused my throat to spontaneously grow clogged. After a moment of her staring at me funny, I at last managed to force my voice out.
I'm I'm back. Back here.
I wasn't sure why it felt to be necessary to add that last bit. Regardless, Shimamura's mother didn't appear to think much of my suspicious behavior.
Hougetsu is out right now. She said she was going shopping.
Oh, I see.
First, I was left wondering who this Hougetsu might be. Then, a second later, it hit me. She was referring to Shimamura. I didn't really think about her given name often, or at all, but upon reinspection, it sure was quite something, wasn't it? It even had a certain sense of nobility to it, all of which made using it in conversation extremely difficult. Should I perhaps start calling her Ho?
I'm sure she'll be back soon. She tends to find stuff like that more annoying than anything.
Right.
As for her tendency to oversleep, though, she'd been like that since always. Yeah, she was that kind of kid who slept like a koala.
Her mother continued to talk with great passion, while I did nod along. Without Shimamura here, I couldn't help but feel like I'd walked into the wrong house. Like this wasn't where I belonged. I really wish she would have just come back already.
So, how is she at school?
Again, her mother addressed me. She. I assume she meant Shimamura.
Um, what do you mean?
Does she attend classes regularly?
Though her hands were moving, the woman's head remained turned my way.
She does.
Well, that's good then.
The way she spoke reminded me of Shimamura. There was no sense of attachment to it. None.
I know I just said it, but that girl, she really does find most things annoying. It must be difficult dragging her along.
Huh?
Uh, no, not at all. It's actually the opposite.
The opposite?
I'm always the one being le led.
It was a pretty weird way to put it. Sure, but nothing else came to mind. Shimamura's mother's shoulders shook in response, almost like she'd just heard a joke.
Ara? Well, that's surprising.
The way she moved her mouth resembled Shimamura a great deal. Speaking of the devil, the door then opened.
I'm back. Oh, Adachi, welcome.
Changing her greeting halfway through, Shimamura walked in. She was carrying a small paper bag in her hand.
Anyway, I'm home.
Welcome back.
It was during the second round of greetings that she noticed her mother was present. She looked at me, then at her. That continued for a moment until finally she opened her mouth.
You, you two didn't talk about anything weird, did you?
The woman's eerie laughter prompted her daughter's eyes to narrow. Regardless, Shimamura didn't say anything else and simply took her shoes off. She then looked towards the hallway and compared her options.
Upstairs might be fine.
With those words, she began walking up the stairs. Naturally, I followed her. Looking at it from this perspective, perhaps saying that I was always the one being led had been the correct way to put it. It was almost like a pet dog or something, constantly chasing after her.
Good grief.
Shimamura grumbled as we entered the room on the second floor, all the while fiddling with her hair. Then, a second later, she stopped and turned to face me. It seemed like she'd remembered something. Something hair related, perhaps?
Right. Crouch for a little bit, Adachi.
Hmm? Okay, sure.
Doing as told, I fell to my knees. Shimamura immediately reached for my hair and touched it. Huh? What? What was going on? Her extended arms casting a shadow on my face, I sat there, utterly confused.
Let's just do this and.
She muttered, all the while her fingers moved across my head. It seemed that she was attaching whatever it was she'd pulled out from the bag to my hair.
Once done, she stepped back and took a good look at me.
Yep, same hairstyles.
Huh?
Shimamura took out a hand mirror and showed me my face on it. I was blushing slightly, and though that might have been normal, what wasn't was the hairpin, modeled after a flower, now attached to the right side of my hair. Same hairstyles, just like she'd said. It seemed like this was what had been inside her bag.
I wanted to try it out since the color matched your hair, although, hmm, looking at it now, it's pretty far off.
She continued observing my face keenly, leading me to blush and feel really embarrassed. I honestly didn't know if she was doing this. It was a pretty common occurrence with Shimamura, and one of the ways in which she resembled her father, I suppose. Regardless, whatever her reason might have been, the sheer fact that she'd bought me something made me beyond happy. The fact that Shimamura, a person who found most things too bothersome to deal with, had gone out of her way to do something for my sake. It was yet another irreplaceable outcome, brought to be by this little tiny thing. My hands moved to touch my hair. I continued fiddling with it until, a few moments later, Shimamura opened her mouth.
Oh, right.
She stated.
I'll give this hairpin to you. I have one just like it myself.
Huh?
She'd bought me the same kind of hairpin that she wore. We matched, didn't we? Was that something she'd been conscious of, too? No, likely not. Based on her reaction, it didn't seem like she thought much of it. I wouldn't be surprised if she'd already forgotten we'd ever talked about it. And yet, as far as I was concerned, this was enough to make fireworks go off inside me. Bubbles and foam gushed on me from all directions, and in the middle of it, there floated something bright. My ears rang, and my head felt dizzy, as that something brought me to a state of euphoria words simply couldn't describe. My arms shook. They shook inwards.
I.
Yeah,
Without a warning, I embraced Shimamura. I was squeezing her with such strength, I worried her head might come off. And yet, I couldn't stop.
Shimamura, I
I'm getting a deja vu.
love, love, lovely.
With my entire heart put into it, I bit my tongue.
Lovely?
That sounds delicious, she went on to add. For me, all I could taste was the blood dripping from my tongue.
Lovely. Yes, I think you're lovely.
Having calmed down slightly, I repeated my statement.
Also, you did something before, didn't you?
Yes.
My arms now weak and powerless, I released her. Quietly, Shimura, well, no. She was hardly what I'd call quiet. If anything, based on the look on her face, she seemed to be holding back a grin.
Hmm. Funny.
Having said that, Shimamura placed her hand on her chin. There, with her eyes pointed my way, she observed me keenly. Huh?
Your face.
She pointed out, after a few moments. I could only assume that I asked something to the effect of, what sort of face? With my expression, as this statement was quickly followed by another.
It's squiggly.
What she meant by that, I couldn't tell you. The whole thing went way over my head. Quickly in what direction? It was becoming an increasingly common occurrence for her to point out the imperfections, was that the right way to put it, of my face. Was that what I did all day long, giving everyone around me weird looks? Possibly. I wasn't aware of it myself, not in the slightest. But yes, maybe that was the case. Even so, there was no quick way for me to check my own expression. Wait, no. I was checking it right now, wasn't I? Checking it through Shimamura. She let me know.
Enough about that.
Hmm?
Looking slightly confused, Shimamura tilted her head. I grabbed her shoulders and made her sit before, crouching down before her myself. While the fact that simply touching my hair had caused me to react that way, or as Shimura put it, make a funny face, did bring me joy, it also made me anxious. Anxious that it might happen again. After all, what about was about to ask her required me to look stern?
Hmm.
Adachi?
What made up the majority of what was left of the specific day? Night. The answer was night. Sun had already begun setting for the day, meaning that, out of all the parts of it that remained, night time was by far the longest. Given that, deciding how to spend it was crucial. Thankfully, I'd already figured that out last evening. As such,
Shimamura,
Hmm?
why don't we sleep together tonight?
I felt a throbbing pain deep inside the roots of my teeth. My dry eyes were pulled downwards. and that hurt as well.
Well, uh,
Drawing my neck in like a child who just been scolded, I nervously waited for Shimura's reaction. I didn't know what I was going to do if she said no. And yet, at the same time, it wasn't possible to convey my feelings unless I spoke up. That was the conflict raging inside my head at all times. A turmoil of positive and negative emotions, pushing each other back and forth. Regardless, I was most often the forward facing thoughts that ended up winning. Oh, but don't get me wrong, that didn't mean that I managed to beat my own weakness. No, the victory was achieved in full by Shimamura. Simple as that.
well, guess it's fine.
She nodded lightly. I could hardly believe what I was hearing. This wasn't a dream, was it? I shook my head. My waving hair felt just as real as the gift she'd given me. There was no weight to Shimura's answer. She just said it. I wonder, was it for that reason that I wasn't shocked? That I still didn't feel that I'd actually achieved anything? In this case, if this was how it was, then
I
Yes?
I should have asked her yesterday. A tempest of regret swept over me. I hadn't even considered that she might accept this easily. First, she'd let me sit between her legs, and now this. It was always at the weirdest of times that Shimura showed no reluctance. Or perhaps, perhaps that was how she acted on a regular? I couldn't tell. The whole thing felt fuzzy to me. There was nothing for me to grab onto. It was for that reason I had so much trouble, for I kept constantly failing, where my hand would randomly get caught and I'd receive bliss without an equivalent. I ended up washing my body in way more detail than normal when taking a bath that evening. So much so that I couldn't help but wonder if I turned into someone else entirely. Instead of glistening, my skin was now dry as sand.
I always feel like I'm failing.
I sat on top of my futon, with a mix of regret, self loathing, and embarrassment burning up inside me. It was then that Shimura walked into the room, bringing with her a futon her own. Huh?
Huh?
I was so shocked, I ended up saying it out loud.
What is it?
With a puzzled look on her face, Shimura rolled the futon she brought open on the floor. The two lined up perfectly, kinda making it seem like we were on a trip or something. And yet, even so, we weren't going to be sleeping on the same futon. Obviously, there was no way I could ever ask her that.
No, nothing.
I shook my head instead. I'd aimed way too high. I felt so ashamed of myself sitting there, hugging my knees. As for Shimamura, she collapsed on her futon with her arms and legs spread out. I took a glance at her and saw that her skin also appeared faintly reddish. It seemed that she'd already taken a bath. Had her sister once again joined her? Something resembling a sense of defeat passed through my mind as I wondered about that. Was it possible that we might one day get to a point where we were able to do that To bath together? How much would it take for Shimamura to drop her guard that low? The path leading there was long and distant, steep and narrow. Mm, it wasn't that I particularly wanted to see her naked. I didn't. I wasn't weird. And yet, I did want Shimamura to embrace me. While that desire was first and foremost psychological, I couldn't deny that there was also a physical component to it. However, it wasn't strictly necessary, and no, never mind. I didn't know where I was going with this.
Still, is it really okay?
I glanced at her without turning my head. Lying on the futon, Shimura did the same.
What is?
For your sister to have to sleep by herself.
The whole situation felt kinda awkward. It was like I'd taken the girl's big sister away from her.
Oh, yeah, it's fine. She actually has a friend staying over as well.
Shimura followed her comment with a laugh, like she'd remember something. Was she talking about that blue girl? Just who was she? Why did she hang around the house like it was completely normal? No one from Shimura's family appeared all that amazed by her, and since they never asked me for an opinion, the stance I'd taken was to simply pretend like I couldn't see her. Still, that hair color, there was something up with it. Shimura's little sister might have been a pretty weird girl herself to be friends with someone like that. Just like her big sister. I glanced at my side and saw Shimura lying down in an utterly defenseless state. I knew I didn't mean much coming from my mouth, but I did think there were aspects to her that were ever so slightly off. She saw certain things in a weird way. Was it due to the fact that she shared her room with her little sister and spent a lot of time with her? Possibly. It would explain why she treated me the same way they treated her, like a little sister. If that was something special, something truly, truly special, then I would have been fine with it. I would have accepted it with open arms. But it wasn't. She already had a sister, a real one. Trying to compete with her for that role wasn't what I was supposed to do. There'd have to eventually come a day when I'd step up and stop being babied by her. And yet, tonight wasn't it. Too much had happened.
Hey, Shimamura, should we go to bed?
I suggested from atop of my futon, without checking what time it was. The apparent confusion that could be heard in Shimura's voice made it clear that maybe I should have.
It's still just 8, though.
Oh, right, it is.
Prompted by her statement, I turned my eyes towards the clock and saw that she'd been correct. It was 7:50, to be precise. Strange, considering that in my mind it was practically midnight already. Considering that I had to go to sleep soon.
I'm tired from work, so I'm yawning a lot. I guess I got sleepy because of that, and uh oh, we shouldn't stay up too late since we have school tomorrow, or something.
I desperately searched for a plausible explanation. Even so, it probably ended up failing miserably.
So, you're telling me you're not full of energy?
Shimamura asked while staring at me astonished. Correct. I slouched back down on the futon. The tempest raging on in my head was truly draining me.
Well, not that I've ever had trouble falling asleep.
Lying down on the futon, Shimamura closed her eyes. Like Rice, her expression softened as well. This might have been the first time I actually came across something that she laughed. Sleeping. Shimura laughed sleeping. While I was happy to know that, it wasn't really the sort of information that made for useful reference.
All right, I guess we'll go to bed then.
That statement, that passive resignation caught in my ear. I turned my head and saw Shimura stretching her body.
Doesn't seem like we have anything else to do.
With those words out of her mouth, she stood up and grabbed the light spool cord.
Can I turn them off? Do you need to go to the bathroom?
No, I'm good.
Okay then. Good night.
Having turned the lights off, Shimamura climbed into her futon. I also mumbled
Good night.
to her, though I doubt she could hear it. Our voices then immediately grew silent. For the next few moments, I remained astonished. Were we really going to start sleeping now? I was painfully aware of everything going on above my neck. Only that section, though. It almost felt like I'd been decapitated.
Hmm.
Nervously, I rolled from side to side. There was a part of me that seriously wondered if I could use my horrible sleeping posture as an excuse to force my way. No, that probably wouldn't work. Definitely not. It was just too much considering what I already had here. Simply getting to lie down next to her, that should have been enough for me. It wasn't that every single gap could be filled at all at once. Thinking about it realistically, I knew that to be the case. At the same time, no. Suddenly, I shook my head sideways. There was nothing wrong with viewing things through the lens that was reality. No. The problem came when you obsess over it and use it as an excuse to neglect your hopes and dreams. What point was there to doing anything without those, without hopes, without dreams? Action was the word for it. Neither was volition, no. It was called inertia. Raising my body slightly, I glanced at Shimamura. Her eyes were closed, and likewise, her breathing appeared stable. Was she already asleep, perhaps? What was going on? What was I doing? Suddenly, I got up off my futon. There, walking on all fours, I closed the distance between us and peered at her face. She was so quiet, so pretty, so statue-like. Before I knew it, my attention had shifted to her lips. My eyes grew hot, almost like there was a fire burning behind them. I wanted so bad. I wanted so badly for her to suggest that we sleep together. Naturally, it went without saying, but I wasn't planning on doing anything. I was just looking. The dream might seem a long time ago clouded my mind. My heart felt like it was about to jump out of my chest, but even so, I couldn't do it. I couldn't act carelessly, even if there was nothing and no one here stopping me. Look, her eyes opened. Wait, they opened? With my face right next to hers, it was impossible for me to escape her gaze. Our eyes met.
Mm, What is it?
Shimamura asked, clearly puzzled. It seemed that me moving around had woken her up. I knew what I should do here. Calm down, then answer. I hadn't done anything yet. I hadn't planned to do anything at all. There was nothing to feel guilty about.
I was just wondering if you were really asleep.
Well, yeah, of course I was. That's why I got into my futon.
What a weird thing to ask, she laughed. Yes, it was. Weird. Slowly, I began pulling away, and yet my hands and knees remained glued onto the floor.
Adachi?
My limbs wouldn't do what I told them. Earlier, I thought about how I could only sense my head. Was this perhaps an extension of that? It genuinely felt like I was unable to distance myself from her. 3, 2, 1, move! I commanded my body. The outcome of this was the opposite of what I wanted, though. Instead of pushing me in the direction I wanted to, the courage I managed to master ended up kicking me hard on the butt. What an irresponsible thing. Imagining myself standing my neck, I moved forward, there, head first. I landed on Shimamura's futon. My nose ended up being crushed, sending forth a wave of dull pain.
That's like how a bug lands.
I heard her comment somewhere above my head. Boldly, I lift my head, only to find myself surprisingly close to her.
Can we um sleep together?
My tongue shaking, I decided to just ask her straight out. This time, it wasn't my body that acted. No, I was doing this out of my own will. Nothing was going to happen if I just waited.
I see.
Shimamura stated shortly. There was no expression that could be gleaned off her face. Had she figured something out? I stared at her confused, only for her to lift up the edge of her blanket. Can I? I asked with my eyes. This prompted Shimamura to roll over and turn her body my way. She then beckoned for me. While I could hardly believe what I was seeing, the pain still dilating from my nose made it clear that this was, in fact, not a dream. If I had a dog's tail, not up would I be wagging it right now, furiously, so fast that it might come off. With sharp, clunky movements, I dived inside her futon. The way I did brought to mind a machine in desperate need for oiling. There was only one explanation for this. I really had washed myself for too long and now my skin was completely dry. I ultimately ended up resting on my left side. Before I knew it, everything there had grown completely numb. There we were, under the same blanket, finishing each other with practically no distance between us. It felt like it would only take a single second of me losing my focus, and I might start screaming out loud. That was just how nervous I was. A grin formed on Shimamura's face. This came to me as a surprise. Not only had I not anticipated, her face was also really close to mine.
What?
Nothing. It's just last night my sister also crawled into my futon.
Oh, I see.
Once again, I'd end up acting the exact same way as her. Although you likely couldn't see it in the dark, my face was growing quite red with embarrassment.
Oh, and she also pestered me to do this.
With those words out of her mouth, Shimamura moved to extend her hand. Swiftly, her arm slid into the space between the mattress and my head. Huh? It took me a second, but after some time spent feeling the warmth of her arm, I finally realized what was happening here. An arm pillow. That's what it was called.
So, what do you think? Does Big Sis's arm make for a good pillow?
She asked, clearly teasing me. I'd yet to fall asleep, but it already felt like I was in a dream. Was this what people refer to when they talk about ecstasy? How I was supposed to put this into words?
I
Hmm?
I feel like I might cry.
I decided to not beat around the bush and instead just say how I genuinely felt. Shimamura stared at me confused as if unsure if I was serious or not. I responded to her by quietly nodding my head. It wasn't a turmoil of emotion that filled me. Rather, it was the opposite. It was something calm, something soft. I did feel moved too, of course, but at the same time, my heart continued spreading wide.
I'm so calm, super calm. My eyes, the depth of my stomach, they're all relaxed now.
Like I said, I rode on top of a gentle wave made of pure emotion. It was no wonder why it felt like my eyes were about to be filled with tears.
Oh, is that so?
It is, I nodded to her, appearing not at all put off by my pathetic state. Shimamura continued staring at me, at my hair to be precise.
Your hair is still a little wet.
Yeah,
I'd been in too much of a hurry to dry it properly. Those feelings of impatience, they seem so distant thinking about it now.
Wet and warm. It feels good in its own way.
Shimamura's hand patted my hair. That sensation alone was enough to cause a thick fluid to engulf my body. That fluid's name was happiness, something like that.
So, can I pull my arm away now?
not yet.
Like a whiny baby, I gripped the sleeve of her pajama. Shimamura gave my frantic hand a glance before sighing softly.
How long?
Until I'm asleep.
I answered, my eyes remaining wide open. To be completely honest, I wasn't actually feeling tired in the slightest. And yet, despite that, the world I was in was wrapped in something soft, something fluffy.
What a hopeless child you are.
Shimamura stated with a wide grin on her face. The tone of her voice made it sound like she was really talking to a child. Regardless, she kept her arm where it was. There we were, the two of us, breathing right next to each other in the middle of the night. My eyes had adapted to the dark, and what they picked up was only what mattered the most.
That reminds me. We're changing the seating order tomorrow, huh?
This topic Shimamura had casually brought up and likely didn't think much of came as news to me.
Really?
It was my first time hearing about it. With a look of puzzlement on her face, Shimamura stared at me for a moment before putting one and one together.
Right. You were skipping class, so you didn't hear.
That makes sense.
I had no choice but to concur. Then, an instant later, my attention shifted to the actual matter at hand. The sitting order was going to change. Oh dear. It happening tomorrow meant that I didn't have any left time to pray.
Adachi?
I wanted to get closer to her, even if by a single step, by a single centimeter, and yet there was no guarantee of that happening. What was I going to do if I got placed in the front row and Shimamura in the back row or vice versa?
I I hope we'll get to sit close to each other.
I clung onto her in a desperate attempt to find something. Something that would make me feel safe. Something that would let me feel like it was going to be okay. And yet, Shimamura simply loved it.
No, it'd be real bad if we were this close. Like, in a lot of ways.
She was perfectly calm, like always. Come to think of it, I never seen her act flustered over anything.
We'd basically be sitting in the same chair at that point, wouldn't we?
Hearing those words softly float out her mouth caused me to think a little. Why? Because the frivolous attitude contained within them was something that I simply couldn't open myself to.
Well, if that happens, so be it.
Shimamura stated as if in response. Had my anxiety really been that visible on my face? That was one way of thinking about it. If anything, I suppose it showcased her personality, what sort of person she was. And yet, were I myself to adopt that approach, it would almost certainly lead to me falling back to loneliness. As such, the anxiety harbored my reasons. I faced them straight and asked myself. It was actually quite simple once you thought about it for a while. No matter what I thought, no matter how far apart we might be,
Tomorrow, can we eat lunch together?
all we needed to was make a promise. That's all. For some reason, it had taken me this long to realize that simple fact.
Sure, of course.
Shimamura replied, bringing me the lift. Her words, her attitude, her temperature, they all play a part.
Oh, all good? All right, relax and start sleeping.
It was in that last sentence that my emotions found their goal. Being able to relax by having her tell me to do so. Was there anything out there that could bring me more joy? Shimamura. She likely wasn't at all aware of my wishes of the subtleties of my heart, and yet
Adachi,
her eyes closed. She spoke my name softly. Shimamura. In the end, she would give me everything I'd ever hoped for.
good night.
Though I hadn't been feeling tired earlier, I know was. All that was happening had drowned those feelings out. There was no reason to fight back. I closed my eyes too, falling into a dream within a dream.
Good night.
Shimamura. Silently, I mumbled her name.
Bonus chapter Hino's House, The Visitor, Part 3. Nagafuji floated on the surface of the water with her arms and legs spread out. As we were taking a bath, she was, naturally, naked. Her body was perfectly horizontal, and the part of it that rose the highest were her breasts. Damn it! It was normally the tip of your nose that did that. Your nose! That was how it was supposed to be.
Must be nice having such a large bathtub.
That's what happens when you have a lot of money.
Washing my head, I randomly replied to whatever it was she was saying. Right. The bathtub at Nagafuji's home wasn't exactly large from what I remembered. Their house in general was quite old, and naturally, the bat also matched the period it was built in. You couldn't even stretch your legs there. It'd been one thing when we were little, but these days, there simply wasn't enough room for the two of us. Mostly due to Nagafuji.
I'm happy, so happy.
She elated while kicking the water up with her feet. Next, she hit her head against the edge of the tub and sank below the surface. It really did seem like she felt like she'd come to a hotel. A part of me grew nervous as I watched her. She wasn't going to say that she wanted to come again soon, was she? After some time, I got up. Nagafuji did so too, and following me, the two of us sat down on the veranda to get some fresh air after the hot bath. If that was the goal, to cool off, then wasn't it pretty counterintuitive for us to be sitting so close to each other? I did wonder about that, but at the same time, found it impossible to distance myself from her.
The sky is so pretty.
She mumbled, her mouth only half open. It was the first time she'd said since coming here.
I love windy days. It means that the sky during the night is always clear.
Hmm? Oh, yeah, I suppose.
It was probably caused by the fast moving clouds creating a sort of modulation in the sky. Then again, I could hardly imagine Nagafuji thinking about it to such an extent. No way! She was the kind of person who took everything at face value. For better or worse, she never put much thought into things.
The scenery here is also really good thanks to the yard being so open and wide.
First the bat, and now this. It really was one praise after another with her. As far as I was concerned, I couldn't agree any less.
I'm more of a fan of the size of your house, personally.
Going between rooms was just so much fun. It was probably different for Nagafuji as she came here so infrequently and everything she saw was new and novel. But as someone who lived here, let me tell you, large houses were more trouble than they were worth, especially when it came time to clean my room.
You're quite lavish, Hino.
It's more like the opposite, I think. I mean, I did say I prefer a smaller house.
I suppose.
Nagafuji nodded softly, her feet dangling off the side of the veranda.
Should we change houses then?
Oh, that would be nice.
If changing them really was that simple, then I'd love to do so. I've also want the maids and my brothers to move with me while at it. Just the thought of Goshiro trying to live in Nagafuji's house made me giggle. He'll probably spend hours, if not days, getting things in order. Not stopping, even the slices of meat in the glass cases were laid out perfectly right away as measured with a ruler. Surprisingly enough, that might be something he was suited for. While I was busy thinking about such things, Nagafuji went and turned her body towards me.
Are you bored of staring at the sky?
She took my hand, then she placed it on her. Oh, oh no. She placed it on her ch- uh, chest. Without a sound, my palm pressed softly against her. Oh, what's going on? I gave Nagafuji a panic look, but she only laughed.
I can let you touch them every now and then. You like them, don't you, Hino?
Uh, oh, I. Mm,
I'm a nice person like that. Still, try not to move your fingers too much.
What the heck kind of warning was that? I could feel my entire face growing red. And yet, I remained exactly as I was, my hand on her chest. I'd lost most of my sensation. Pretty much the only thing I could feel at this point were Nagafuji's fingertips as they grasped my wrist.
Is it fun?
It's warm.
And that went not just for my hand, but for my head too. Seriously, what were what are we doing? There was something about the situation that made it impossible for me to look up.
Okay, that's enough. Thanks.
No longer able to bear it, I began pulling my hand away. However, as I was doing so,
Wow.
Nagafuji wrapped her arms around my head and brought me to her embrace. This surprise attack caught me completely off guard, and ultimately I was left snuggled up against her chest. Both her warmth and the warmth of the bat seeped into me, once again bringing out the sweat I've just washed off.
What's gotten into you?
Really, you're just so cute, Hino.
Like cherishing a pet animal, she patted my head through the bat towel. How dare she praise someone so casually? It was that fact which really caused me to blush. More so than her calling me cute. As I remained there in her embrace, her playing with my hair, I slowly began feeling like I was touching the very essence of Nagafuji. Our teacher in our elementary school had treated her like a dumb idiot. But really, when you got down to it, she was just being very honest. She took everything at the face value. That's the kind of person Nagafuji was. No doubt did she maintain a similar sort of stance when it came to her own emotions, how she felt about things. How were you supposed to go against someone like that? I had no idea. I was nearly I wasn't I wasn't nearly as honest as her. Ugh, I couldn't be. When I finally chose to reply, I did so with sarcasm to hide my shame.
Hmm, you really do like me, huh?
Yep,
Ah, I'm embarrassed about it. Even just a little bit.
Today's Adachi. The endless smile on Shimamura's face meant that this must have been a dream. And being a dream meant that I could ask for anything I wanted. Yeah,
Hu- Hug me. Pat my head. Squeeze me tight.
I spread my arms wide open, only for her to grin at me wryly, clearly confused. No way. Was this not a dream after all? What was I going to do? In the midst of my panic, the ceiling of the dark room appeared before my eyes. My heart was pounding so fast it hurt, and before I knew it, I found my hands pressed against my chest.
Ah,
I was tired. Chapter 6. Love and Sakura. For how long was I going to keep pretending like I was asleep? My eyes closed shut. I struggled to find the answer to that question. I was well aware that the sunlight was hitting my back, that it was already morning, and yet the sound that filled my ears was not the chirping of birds, but instead that of Adachi's soft voice. She was praying. Please let me sit close to Shimamura. She wanted it to happen that badly. I honestly didn't know how to react. I also wasn't able to get up. Could it be? Had she prayed like this in the beginning of the year as well, before the new classes had been announced? Considering how things had played out, I could only assume so. That image of her jumping up and down with the spring behind her was still fresh in my memory. Speaking of Adachi, I could sense her turn over. In the next instant, a hand that wasn't mine fell on top of my numb fingertips and grasped them tight. Though it was spring already, Adachi's hand felt ever so slightly cold. She remained like that, completely motionless, and little by little, that chilliness began to vanish. It was transforming into my warmth. There was a part of me that felt that to be precious. I went ahead and shook my hand a little, as if I'd just woken up. I could hear Adachi stop praying, and as it was resting on top of my arm, felt her move her head. I then slowly opened my eyes, and there she was, Adachi. Her lips pursed tight. She hastily let go of my hand she'd been grasping before turning my way. It appeared that she was blissfully unaware of the fact that I'd caught her in the act. Appropriate for her name, Adachi's face was colored in the same tinge of pink as the flowers of a Sakura tree. I also got the impression that it was even closer to mine than before we'd fallen asleep. Her weight currently rested on my elbow instead of my forearm. It was a sort of distance where it will only take a single unfortunate roll from one side to another, and our heads will end up smashing together. Dangerous, indeed. I suppose you could say that the fact that we were both calm sleepers had really saved us.
Mm. Good morning.
Good morning.
Adachi's head shook a little as she spoke. Her eyes were wide open and also somewhat dry, giving me the impression that she'd been awake for a while now. I suppose that made sense when you went to bed at 8. If anything, sleeping for this long might have made me the exception here. And yet, after all those hours of extra sleep, I still felt slightly tired. A yawn will surely escape my mouth were I to let my guard down.
What did we do yesterday?
Huh?
Her question came to me as a complete shock. I really didn't know what she was asking.
I was just wondering last night. What did you do, Shimamura?
Yet another incomprehensible question was added on top of the previous one. I struggled to come up with an answer, and all the while, Adachi's ears turned even further red, as if her head was boiling.
The night specifically? Mm, I slept, I guess?
Hadn't I been right there? Hadn't my arm literally been under her head? Was everything okay with her? There was also the possibility that the problem lay within me. Perhaps something big truly had happened, just in a way that made it difficult for me to grasp. Could it be? Had Adachi done something? Like scribbled some text on my face? I decided to check just in case. Whereas I was experiencing uneasiness akin to watching a horror movie, the same wasn't true with Adachi.
Well, in that case, that's good.
She stated while curling her back, her voice filled with relief coming all the way from the bottom of her heart. There was a look of tranquility on her face as she rested her head on my arm and closed her eyes, almost like trying to hide her teary pupils. I could hear her breathe softly, in a way sounding like she was still asleep. In the midst of those breaths, something exited her mouth and reached my ears. Maybe it was just me, but it really did sound like she'd said the following words.
Thank goodness it was just a dream.
I found it impossible to shake her awake and question her given the soft expression on her face. Instead, I was left simply to hold my tongue. The silence between us continued for the next few moments. And yet, for some reason, it didn't feel painful like it did on the phone. Like I'd fallen into a deep ravine and been robbed of the freedom to move my limbs. The weight of her head and the numbness of my arm mixed together to form a pleasant sensation I didn't quite know how to describe. And before I knew it, yet another yawn had escaped my mouth. My fingers twitched a little. I wonder, did Hino and Nagafuji do this too? Idle about under the same freedom? It might have been understandable in some weird way for them to do it, but us, I wasn't sure. Regardless, lying there, I turned my head to the extent I was able to and checked the clock, only to find that we really had to get up and start getting ready soon. And in longer than this, and Mom will likely come wake us up. Me getting up required Adachi to do so as well, and yet she showed no signs of doing so, instead simply remaining in place with her eyes closed shut. I went ahead and moved my arm a little. This prompted Adachi to slightly clench her fists, all the while her cheeks turned red, as if blushing. Was it the lightness of her complexion that allowed me to immediately pick up the faintest changes in color on her face? Probably. What about going forward though? Will my impression of her change once the summer sun burned her skin? It wasn't really all that far off. Regardless, if it was our goal to ever reach said summer, what mattered now was waking her up. While it was unfortunate given how sleep deprived she appeared, I saw no way out of this aside from me personally assuming the role of an alarm clock. Repeating myself from earlier, I shook my arm once again, this time with a bit more force. Adachi responded by shaking her head from left to right, as if refusing my suggestion. This was followed by her gripping the sleeve of my pajama tight. Her body then tense up as she assumed a reluctant stance. Looking at her like this, would you ever have been able to guess how old she was? Seriously, what a handful. I couldn't help but smile.
Wait! Last.
I'd just been putting on my shoes in the entrance when Mom stopped me. As far as her ways of addressing me went, that one felt quite novel.
Take this with you.
She said as she handed me a rectangular bundle. Next, she turned towards Adachi.
Here's one for you too, Adachi.
Pulling the object I received in my hands, I decided to go ahead and ask her for clarification.
What is this?
Ada, can't you tell just by looking?
Packed lunch is making a comeback?
Exactly, she replied, while giving me the thumbs up. Where was this coming from? My eyes wide open, I stared at her confused. For a second, Mom looked like she was about to launch into a full-scale explanation, but ultimately decided to skip it, likely because she couldn't be bothered.
Oh, just hurry up and get going already. You'll be late otherwise.
Having said that, Mom drove us up. What a change in mood. Seriously. I gave Adachi a quick glance to see if she concurred. This sight which appeared before me was not at all what I expected. Her mouth half open. She stared at the lunchbox she'd just been handed. Anyway, with that exchange out of the way, it was time for another productive day at school. Or not. I have my doubts about it. A thought crossed my mind as I rode on the back of Adachi's bike.
Come to think of it, this is our first time going to school together, isn't it?
She'd given me multiple rides back from school, but never the other way around, completely disregarding the fact that she was riding a bike. Adachi turned around to face me, prompting me to lift my head.
Might be.
She mumbled, "This was where you will normally
This
expect to turn back." But Adachi didn't, instead choosing to spend the next couple of moments staring at me. Reluctantly, I was left to watch the road in her stead. The roadside trees dripping with light, the stained walls of the buildings, the streams of people and cars, the white clouds that left a long trail behind them, and the sun which intensely burned my hair, once again black. I bet in its shine, warmer than during spring, but not as hot as during summer. Everywhere you looked, you could see signs of May, but beauty and field were brought to the surface by the sunlight shining on the school road just past the residential area. Given that it'd been sunny yesterday, it only made sense that we had a school today.
Furthermore, as we were going there from the same place anyway, we'd decided that Adachi might as well give me a ride on her bike. Speaking of, she had loaded up all the luggage she'd brought with her, all in all making it 3 or 4 bags she had to carry. You might have thought this would be really tough on her, especially when you factored in my weight, but surprisingly no. She appeared to have no difficulty making the pedals turn. I rarely meant it as a joke when I thought about her as being reliable.
You really should turn back around now.
I stated lightly, pressing the back of Adachi's head with my finger. Although her lips did curl in a way that indicated reluctance, ultimately she did as told. With that matter dealt with, I began drawing my hand in. It was there my eyes came across a reddish mark resembling the outline of a flower etched onto my skin. Instantly, I recognized it to be the pattern from the pillow upon which the arms supporting Adachi's head had rested for the duration of the night. Were I to roll up her uniform, I'd likely find that Adachi bore a similar mark, wouldn't I? Thinking about that, I gently rubbed my arm through my sleeve. With my hands on her shoulders, I went ahead and took a good look at Adachi. Tension was written all over her, and not just on her face, but also on her hands that tightly gripped the handlebars of the bike. Maybe even a bit too tightly, judging by the visible tendons going across the backs of her hands. Was she nervous because of the massive, as far as she was concerned at least, event that was the new seating order waiting for us at school? Probably. Wait, no. Considering that we'd yet to actually change anything, I suppose it was more accurate to say she was scared of us deciding the new seating order. To what extent was prayer able to defy reality? Was there any meaning to simply casting yourself into the flow of time and letting it carry you without interacting with the world around you? Watching things happen was way more fun when you knew what had caused them. Though they'd barely started falling back during the day of the entrance ceremony, right now, the flowers of the Sakura trees were but a mere shadow of their former selves. Come to think of it, have I ever seen a Sakura in full bloom? That was the thought that crossed my mind as I walked down the pathway leading to the school building, every now and then taking glances at the sky above. By virtue of how things were scheduled, the vast majority of the flowers had always fallen off by the time spring break came to an end and I returned to school, year after year. I found my eyes naturally turning towards the ground covered by a layer of discarded petals as I walked forward. Really, it might have been that I only knew the lushness of cherry trees and leaf, having cast away their blossoms and nothing else. Deep sense of regret filled me now that I was aware of what I'd missed. I really wanted to see them, and yet there was no turning back the clock. How many more times were things going to happen in my life? How many more times would sakura trees bloom and then drop their flowers?
Hmm.
I compared the paper slip I'd opened to the numbers written on the blackboard. It had been too I'd been too busy thinking about this and that, and by the time I'd realized it, the new seats had already been assigned. With the draw completed, each one of us was made to move their desk to the spot indicated by the number written on the blackboard, matching that on their piece of paper. Based on the intense glare pressing hard against my back, I could only assume that Adachi was already done with hers. I eventually found where the number I'd drawn placed me, one row to the left from my current seat, second from the back. As for Adachi, she sat around 3 seats to the right of me.
Hmm. Huh. Not too shabby, honestly.
She wasn't in direct contact with me. At the same time, she also wasn't needlessly far. A big gap horizontally, but a small one vertically. I wonder, what did this say about the extent to which prayers had come true? Having already gotten to my spot, I sat there, resting my head against my hand, observing Adachi while the rest of the class continued moving their desks around. I adjusted my gaze a little, and it was there that our eyes met. Although the expression on her face itself did appear mostly the same as before, one critical thing to point out was the fact that her head was pointed straight ahead, not downwards. From this, it seemed reasonable to assume that she was satisfied with the outcome. Looking unstable, like she might melt soon, Adachi continued, staring my way. They were the same eyes I had seen inside the futon. In other words, she appeared tired. That was going to last this entire day, wasn't it? A small smile appeared upon my face. I could definitely sympathize with her there. Class then began, and after what felt like an eternity, the teacher eventually paused for long enough for me to glance to my side. I did just that, and wouldn't you know it, our eyes once again ended up meeting. We remained like that, staring at each other. A few moments passed, then a couple more. It ended up being too much for Adachi to handle, and after some time she ultimately looked away as if unable to bear it any longer. The same wasn't the case with me. I continued observing her like I had up until this point, and soon enough, she did turn her head back towards me a second time. Although there were two or three heads between us, somehow our eyes managed to grasp exactly what was going on inside the mind of the other person. This lasted for a handful of seconds until Adachi eventually turned her head away, this time for real. I watched as she proceeded to trace something on the surface of her textbook with her finger, her downturned face giving off the appearance of utter bewilderment. That something seemed to be a series of letters. I tried to follow them with my eyes, but unfortunately wasn't able to pick any of them up. What I did see was the flower I'd given her yesterday, still attached to her hair, now waving in an unsteady fashion. In conclusion, everything appeared to be fine with her. Good. With that matter out of the way, I next turned my eyes towards the window and the intense sunlight shining through. Oh, it was already May, huh? Where had the time gone? We'd begun our second year, and it seemed like an entire month had passed between it and me opening my eyes. There was only a single April left for me before I'd be done with high school. May, June, the class I was currently attending, they were all the same way, all things that would happen only once and then never repeat. Doing things over was not at all an effective way to live your life. The faster the flow of time grew, the more aware of that fact I was forced to become. You did not have infinite time to go through each and every day at your own leisurely pace. It might be the sakura petals covering the ground symbolized the time I had wasted. Unlike me, Adachi was well aware of this being how the world worked, which was why she strove to do her absolute best each day, almost as if chased by something. Maybe. I couldn't really tell for sure. Saying that I had a good grasp of her would have been an overstatement. Regardless, while she did from time to time appear like she was about to pass out, her tired eyes remained fully open the entire duration of the class. I couldn't help but smile a little as I watched her give it her all. There was something about the sight which caused a load to come off my chest, as if I was touching the warmth of the spring in its very essence. Oh, is that it? Is that the answer? Distancing myself from the painful atmosphere surrounding me, I moved forward in its direction. One day. Yes, one day. A future, unlike anything I was able to imagine. A future I wouldn't be able to avoid. A world without spring break. A future where there might not be anyone beside me. Even if I didn't want it, there would eventually come a day when I, too, would be made to walk down a spring path while staring at the sakura trees blooming above me. It would take a while. There was no reason why I needed to just wait. I could always satisfy myself with the sakuras blooming right in front of me. That didn't seem like a bad option. Not bad. That's how I believed it to be. It being late April, there were no longer any trees blooming. Given that, the Sakura I sought would be found within Adachi, in the profile of her face, surely.